For just a few seconds, the calm blue Caribbean looked completely ordinary, the kind of peaceful ocean scene sailors see every day. But what followed was one of those rare moments in modern history when a single wrong decision could have dragged two nations into a dangerous confrontation. Because as the sun rose over the horizon at exactly 6:14 a.m., radar operators aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford noticed fast-moving contacts appearing on their screens, closing distance far quicker than normal commercial or friendly naval traffic, and within moments visual confirmation followed, revealing 3 Venezuelan warships pushing hard through the water, bows cutting aggressively into the waves, engines straining at high speed, deliberately heading toward the projected path of the most powerful aircraft carrier on Earth. A massive floating fortress carrying advanced aircraft, nuclear propulsion, and nearly 5,000 sailors. A symbol not just of American naval strength, but of global power projection itself. And while the US Navy publicly described this movement as a routine transit through international waters, Venezuelan leadership viewed it very differently, as months of economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, internal political pressure, and international condemnation had been steadily boiling beneath the surface. And this naval encounter was carefully chosen as a low-cost but high-visibility way to challenge the United States without firing a single missile, using proximity, risk, and psychological pressure rather than open warfare. Because confronting an aircraft carrier at sea is not about winning a fight, it is about sending a message. And as the Venezuelan ships accelerated past 28 knots and tightened into a deliberate wedge formation, naval professionals on both sides immediately recognized the move as a classic intimidation tactic designed to force the carrier strike group into changing course, slowing down, or reacting in a way that could later be framed as provocation. Yet, aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, everything remained calm, because doctrine, training, and discipline exist for moments exactly like this. And from the bridge to the Combat Information Center, sailors followed procedures with precision, as radar tracked each vessel's speed, heading, and maneuvering patterns, confirming identity through multiple sensors while lookouts visually monitored every deck movement through high-powered optics, noting crew positions, mounted weapons, and signaling equipment, because at close range, intentions can shift in seconds, and while tension slowly built, the carrier itself did not alter speed or course even slightly, a deliberate choice meant to assert lawful navigation in international waters without escalation, as nearby escort ships subtly repositioned into defensive screen formations, almost invisibly to an untrained eye, but with exacting calculations beneath the surface. While the guided missile destroyer SS gravely edged ahead and slightly outward, prepared to act as a physical barrier if needed, its crew fully aware that in a worst-case scenario they would be the first line of contact, and over open maritime radio frequencies, calm professional warnings were broadcast repeatedly in both English and Spanish, clearly stating position, intent, and international law. Yet the Venezuelan ships remained completely silent, refusing to acknowledge the calls, a choice that dramatically increased the risk of misinterpretation, because radio silence during close naval maneuvering is rarely accidental and often signals deliberate pressure, forcing the other side to make decisions under uncertainty. And as minutes passed, the distance between steel hulls dropped from miles to thousands of yards, then to mere hundreds, close enough that sailors could see individual figures on the opposing decks, watch their movements, and feel the tension even without weapons fired. And at this point, flight operations aboard the carrier were halted, aircraft secured, elevators locked, and flight deck crews cleared below, not because panic had erupted, but because discipline demanded readiness while maintaining the image of normalcy, as helicopters launched smoothly into the air, orbiting above the approaching ships, their cameras recording every movement, while pilots relayed live assessments back to commanders, ensuring that nothing went unnoticed. And then came the most critical moment of the encounter, when the lead Venezuelan ship suddenly altered course sharply, angling across the projected path of the carrier itself. A maneuver that carried enormous symbolic and physical risk, because at that speed and distance, even a minor steering error could result in collision, injury, or an uncontrollable escalation. And instantly, without hesitation, the USS gravely surged forward, placing itself directly between the patrol ship and the aircraft carrier, its captain committing to protect the fort even at personal risk, bringing two warships into dangerously close proximity, measured in yards rather than safe nautical miles. A moment that stretched endlessly for the sailors watching from both sides, as hearts raced but hands remained steady. And although weapons systems were fully capable and ready, none were activated in an aggressive posture, because modern deterrence relies as much on restraint as on firepower. And after several agonizing seconds, the Venezuelan ship reduced speed slightly, its bow drifting away from the collision course before peeling off to the south, breaking formation as the remaining ships followed suit, disengaging completely without firing a shot, signaling that the message had been delivered but escalation deliberately avoided, while the American ships did not pursue or shadow aggressively, simply maintaining course and speed, demonstrating confidence rather than reaction. And within hours the encounter shifted from the ocean to the media battlefield as Venezuelan state outlets framed the maneuver as a bold stand against U.S. intimidation, while the Pentagon issued a carefully worded statement confirming routine operations and professional conduct, avoiding inflammatory language entirely, because in the modern strategic environment, perception often outweighs physical outcomes, and analysts later described the event as a textbook example of gray zone conflict, a space between peace and war where nations test limits, probe responses, and apply pressure without crossing red lines, where ships rather than soldiers become tools of political messaging. And for the sailors involved, the lesson was deeply personal and unforgettable, because they experienced firsthand how global crises no longer begin with bombs, but with navigation choices, radio silence, and steady nerves. As the Caribbean Sea slowly returned to its quiet blue calm, flight operations resumed aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred, aircraft launching and recovering with precision, yet every crew member understood that they had participated, in a moment that perfectly illustrated the thin line separating peace from conflict in the modern world, where power is measured not only by weapons carried, but by discipline shown when provoked. Because sometimes the most decisive victory at sea is simply refusing to be forced into a mistake.